This is Amud Yomi Gemara in Shabbos Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis. We pick it up in the very bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. Teaches the Mishnah Hamicham. We have a small pot, Shepinua, that was cleared. You emptied out to this urn. You're not allowed to put cold water into this urn to heat it up. Aval, what are you allowed to do? No, you say no. You're allowed to put the cold water litoichai into it, which we have to see what it is. And just to warm it, but not to heat it. So says the Gemara, my Kalmar, what's going on over here? Meaning, the Mishnah began by saying, don't put it in the mecham. The Mishnah continued and said, you seem like yes, put it in the mecham. So Amar Ravad Bar Masnachi Kamar Hamecham Shabina Mimenu Mayim Chamim. This urn that you remove from it to hot water, Lo Yitin Mayim Soinanim Mu'atim. The urn that you took out the hot water, you now put a little bit of cold water into it. Why? Kidei Sheyichamu. You put a little bit of cold water into boiling hot pot, it gets it hot. Aval Noisi Letoiche Mayim Mirubim. You put a lot of water into it. Why? Because then the hot pot is going to do what? It's going to merely remove the chill from the water, and therefore that is allowed. Says the Gemara, as we turn over to a short Amud, our Amud of Alpha Mebeis, asks the Gemara, how are you allowed to put even a lot of cold water into this boiling hot pot? It causes the vessel to harden. As Rashi points out, we're talking about kli matchis, a metal item that's boiling hot. When you put cold water into it, it strengthens the pot. So asks the Gemara, why isn't it us or not because of the water, but because of the pot? Answers the Gemara, Rav Shemini, Damar Davishin Miskavin Mutter. You weren't doing this for the pot, to harden the pot. You do this for the water. The pot might get a little harder. That's Eina Miskavin, and that is Mutter. Ask the Gemara Maskevla Abaye. On the second line of Mem Alpha Min Beis, ask Abaye, Midi Mecham Shebina Min Amayim Katani. Did the Mishnah say a Mecham that you kick out the water? Mecham Shepino Katani. What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said an urn that was empty, an urn that was removed. What does Pinahum sound like? Sounds like you took the pot off of the fire. Not simply that you emptied out the pot. The wordage of the Mishnah seems to indicate that we're discussing that you took the pot from the flame, but the water is still in it. So how can you tell me that that's pshat, like we just said, the difference between a little bit of water and a lot of water? Elomar Abayi, rather Abayi says, Achi Kamar, this is pshat in the Mishnah. We have a hot water urn that you removed from the fire of Yishba Mayim Chamim, and it has hot water in it. This is such a critical halacha. We have this all the time. So you have a pot of boiling hot water, you cannot put into it Mayim muat, a little bit of water. Why? Because it's going to get boiling up. Meaning, if I had, this is a coffee cup, let's say this was a mamish, a pot of hot water. If I were to drop a little bit of cold water into here, what would happen? The whole cup would remain yatzei led this by, and you'd be heating up the cold water. Aval, what are you allowed to do? You got to put a lot of water in, just so that the cold water is warm. So if I have, for example, I want to make warm water for, I don't know, a bottle. So if I take boiling hot water and I put a drop of cold water into it, it's going to stay boiling hot. But if I put a lot of cold water in, then it's going to get warm, and that is allowed. Continues Abaye, and this is Mamish Halacha brought down in Shinya Tes. Shinya Ches, excuse me. Umechab Shepina Menu Mayim, and says Abaye, the urn that you took out the water, Lo Yitelcha Mayim Kol Eker. On that, now says Abaye, like his question was, don't put any water into it. Why? Because it causes the kli to harden. For Rav Yehudi, Damar Davar Sheinu Miskavein is, of course, ulcer. Continues the Gemara, Amara, 4 lines from the wide lines. Lo Yishanu, the din in the Mishnah, that you're allowed to put a lot of cold water into the pot, Ella lahav shir. Avol, however, if you put it in litzaref, it's also Shmuel Amar, if you litzaref nami mutter. Says more, what? Litzaref lechatchila mi shari. If you're going to tell me it's a byproduct, it's a davar she'ein miskavein. Okay, I can understand. But if you're telling me you're doing it lechatchila to harden the pot, who says that's mutter? Amarav lo yishanu elam. Shear lahavshir doesn't mean you're doing it lahavshir. It means you're putting in the amount that's going to cause the pot to turn, the water to turn warm. Aval shear, but the amount of water litzaref that it fills up the whole pot in order to harden it is usher. And on that, on the shear, on the quantity, not on the kavana, and on that is Shmuel Amar. Afilu shear litzaref. Even if you're putting the shear in to harden it, even that amount of water will be mutter on the top of the Beis Amud Aleph. On that, Shmuel does not have a problem. Just going a job further, as we have another moment, ask the Gemara that it sounds like Lamemer the Shmuel of Shimon Svirle. Sounds like Shmuel holds, as long as it's not your kavana, it's mutter. Davar she'ein miskaven is mutter. But ask the Gemara of Amar Shmuel, but Shmuel holds. We're 3 lines down in Beis Amud Aleph. That you're allowed to put out the coals so that people don't get damaged in the streets with these boiling hot coals. But not if it's wooden coals. Why? The only issue with the shalitz is that it's a psik reisha. When you put out the coals, even though you're not having kavana for it, you're creating a coal when it's made out of wood. So if he holds like Rav Shimon that davar she'ein miskaven is mutter, why is he only allowed to put out the boiling hot metal? Shimon let you put out the boiling hot wood. Answers the Gemara, but davar she'ein miskaven something like Rav Shimon. But something like Rav Yudah that it's also obviously how to split this hair is not simple, but we'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.